Hey guys, today I'm here with the Rugged Ridge Spartacus HD Tire Carrier hinge casting, fitting all 2018 and newer JL Wranglers. So if you're in the market to upgrade to larger wheels and tires, or you've already done so, and you're looking for some extra reinforcement for your tailgate to make sure that it's going to hold up over a long period of time, this option by Rugged Ridge is going to be a really good choice to take a look at. So whenever you upgrade to larger wheels and tires, you're not only thinking about that extra diameter that you're getting in space that you need on the back of your Jeep, but you also have to consider all of that extra weight that you're going to be putting on your carrier as well as your tailgate. So what happens with the original tailgate hinges is that they seem to wear out over time, considering that they're not built for all of that extra weight, especially when you're bouncing around on the trail and all of that vibration when you are driving around on the street. This option by Rugged Ridge is going to do a really good job at providing some extra strength as well as some extra structural rigidity to your tailgate with this large hinge setup. So you're getting large surface area coverage and a connection between the two hinges here that's going to add a lot of strength to your tailgate and be a solid link between your tub and the tailgate on your Jeep. Now this is going to be made of some heavy duty materials, heavy duty aluminum and forged steel, so you can ensure that this is going to hold up for a very long time and handle all of that extra weight that you're putting on your tailgate. Now I would like to mention that this is only going to come with that hinge setup. You aren't getting a wheel mount for this, but that means that you are able to use the factory carrier. This does come with spacers to allow you to mount up the factory carrier in that factory location, and not to mention it's just going to give an overall more off-road and aggressive look to the back of your Wrangler, especially with the aluminum construction and that black powder coat finish, and even the Rugged Ridge branding on the back here. Now with all of that being said, this is going to be roughly $400, and in my personal opinion, I think for what you're getting out of the design as well as the really heavy duty construction, that $400 is a pretty good price. Now if we take a look at some other hinge solutions that are out there on the page, some other options will not connect in the middle here. They won't necessarily have that extra strength that this is going to give, considering that this is connected all around. They may be made of HD steel instead of aluminum and forged steel, which can get a little bit heavier on the back of your Wrangler, and some other options that are a little bit more expensive will usually include that wheel mount. Now with this, you're getting a lightweight yet strong construction. You're getting a very off-road and structurally sound build, while also giving you the option to mount up whatever spare tire carrier or wheel mount that you want. So that $400 is perfect in my opinion. Install is going to be easy as well. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. You're going to need some very basic hand tools to get the job done, and I would slot out 2 hours worth of time to do it. So speaking of that install, let's hop into that now. The tools that I used for my install were an impact wrench, 13mm deep socket, 21mm socket, a T55, T50, and T25 torque socket, trim removal tools or panel removal tools, the ratchet and the T40 Torx bit out of the JL toolkit, 1/4 inch drive and 3/8 inch drive ratchet, 3/8 inch drive and 1/4 inch drive 3-inch extension, and a breaker bar. To kick off this install, we're going to go ahead and take off our spare tire. I'm using the ratchet and the T40 Torx out of the JL toolkit to remove that cover on the backup camera. Then we can grab our impact wrench and take off our spare. So all we have to do is unlock this with that T40 Torx bit and then pull back, and then we'll be able to access our lug nuts. So the tool that you'll be using is going to depend on your lug nuts. If you have stock lug nuts, you'll be using a 22mm deep socket. I have 6 spline lug nuts, so I am going to use our key as well as a 21mm socket. Once the spare is disconnected, we can pull this off. So our next step is to open up our tailgate. We have to remove this trim piece in order to disconnect our third brake light as well as our backup camera wiring harness. So I am going to just take a pry tool and pull forward on this. It's held in by a number of clips. After that's off, we can disconnect the 2 wiring harnesses up here at the top. Then we can put our panel aside and close up our tailgate. What we can do now is pull on this grommet And this will pull our wiring harness out, making sure that we don't damage the wires when we disconnect our spare tire carrier. Then we can take a 13mm socket and remove the 8 bolts that are surrounding the actual carrier. So for the last bolt, make sure that you have a hand on your carrier because it will come off. In order to access our tailgate hinges, we will have to take a little bit of the interior apart on the passenger side. So I'm going to remove this cover as well as a couple of other trim pieces and one of our tie downs to do that. So we're going to start with this cover for our little storage area. All we have to do is lift this up and pull back. Then we can remove this piece, just have to pull up lightly on there. What we can do next is remove this tie down right here. So this is going to have a little cover on it. I'm just going to take a pry tool and pop that up. That's going to expose a T40 Torx bolt. I'm going to use that same T40 Torx bit in the ratchet from our JL toolkit to remove that. Just put that to the side. And then we can start to work on this piece here. So we're gonna start up here at our seatbelt cover. I'm just gonna take, again, a pry tool and pry this part of the seatbelt cover out. Again, it's gonna be held in by a couple of clips. Just move that up. And then this piece is separated in the middle. That's what we're going to be removing. So I'm just going to pry back on this part and start disconnecting. So on some models, you may have some Torx bolts holding in some of the trim. We have a Alpine subwoofer here, so I'm going to use a T25 Torx and a 3-inch extension to remove the bolt that's holding in this back part of our trim. So once that bolt is removed, we can start to kind of pull and pry on our trim pieces here. Just need to remove this front cover. So if you are having some difficulty getting this trim piece out, we may have to remove the 2 other tie downs, so we can repeat that process with the trim tool as well as that T40 Torx. So with those out of the way, we can completely remove this panel, and you'll see that this trim lies under there. So now we can continue to pull back and get this out of the way. Now there is going to be a wiring harness. We don't necessarily need to completely remove that. What I'm going to do is just move this back so we can access these 2 panels over here on this side. Once that trim piece is removed, it's going to expose 2 pockets here. You're going to have painted stickers. They should be painted to your color code. All we have to do is really pull back on those, and that's going to expose each of our hinges. You're going to have 3 bolts there. There's also going to be one at the bottom. We're just going to peel back, and that's going to expose that bottom one. What we can do now is close up our tailgate and start to remove our hinges. What we're going to do is start with the hinges on our actual tailgate here. I'm going to use a T55 Torx as well as a 3-inch extension to give myself some room away from the tailgate, and a hand ratchet to make sure that we are not stripping these tailgate bolts. So if you've never removed your tailgate bolts, they may be a little bit tight. I am going to use a breaker bar just to crack them free. So once the bolts are cracked, we can grab our 3/8 inch drive ratchet and go ahead and completely remove them. I'm also going to be using a 3-inch extension just to give myself a little bit of room away from the tailgate so we don't scratch anything. So once we remove the hinges from our tailgate, we're gonna hop inside our cab area and remove the bolts that are holding the hinges onto the body of the Jeep. You wanna make sure that you do not open your tailgate. It's not being held on by anything besides the latch when it's shut like this. So just keep that in mind and we'll go inside that cab area. So now we can start by removing the 3 bolts on the upper hinge. I'm gonna use a 13mm socket as well as a 3-inch extension in my impact wrench just to give myself a little bit of room away from the body piece here. Now I'm going to completely remove 2 of the bolts, but for this 3rd bolt, you want to make sure that you have a hand on the hinge because it will come loose. And once that 3rd bolt is removed, what we can do is pull outward on the hinge and we'll be able to fully disconnect it. Now we can do the same thing with the bottom one. Before we hop into the actual install, I wanted to sit the old hinges and the new Spartacus setup on the table, tell you guys a little bit more about the benefits that this new setup is going to provide in comparison to your factory hinges. Now, this is going to overall just be a very big upgrade considering the structural rigidity as well as the construction of the Spartacus setup. Your factory hinges, they are perfect for a stock application, perfect to carry the stock tire size and the stock tire weight. However, once you upgrade to a larger wheel and tire, that extra weight tends to wear on the hinges, considering that they only have a smaller pin inside and they're not really going to be made for that extra weight and that larger setup. Now, moving over to the Spartacus setup, this is going to be made of an aluminum construction, so you are getting that HD effect out of it. You also are going to have forged steel hinges and hardened pins. Not to mention the pins themselves are a lot larger, so they are going to be able to handle a lot more weight without wearing out so quickly or even just wearing out at all. The big difference though is the fact that these 2 hinges are going to be connected in the middle with this X setup. Now that's also just going to add to all of that extra strength, considering that there's a lot more surface area that's going to be holding up that tailgate as well as supporting the extra weight of that spare tire. You're also getting a nice black powder coat finish on top, which is going to give you a more off-road and aggressive look than the factory painted hinges. Now, this is going to be compatible with the factory carrier and other carriers that are mounted up in the factory location. With this, we are going to be mounting part of this hinge setup to the factory spare tire carrier location, but we are provided with spacers to accommodate for the factory spare tire carrier. Now, this is also obviously going to work with the Spartacus carrier as well, so you are safe on all accounts there. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and put our new setup on. So what we're gonna do is line this up with the hinge insert and attach them to the body first. Now we're just going to make sure that that sits flush up against the body of the Jeep. And then we can start to attach the top hinge. That's going to be the easiest one to do with the tailgate closed. Now we're not going to tighten anything down just yet. We want to make sure that everything is installed before we go ahead and tighten. But I would recommend to snug the bolts up at least by hand so everything's staying in place. Now we can attach the bottom one. You might have to kind of grab on the carrier and lift up and wiggle it around in order to thread it in a little bit easier. So once you have the bottom 3 and the top 3 threaded in, we can move outside and attach the hinges to our tailgate. So now we can bend this in. You just want to be careful when you're doing this. Bend it in as much as we can to line it up. Then we can grab our provided hardware. It's going to be our longer Allen head bolts with a flat washer, and we can start to secure these down. So what I'm going to do is use a T50 Torx and a 3-inch extension, and I'm just going to try to line this up and thread this in the best as I can. We can repeat that for the other 4 bolts. What I'm going to do next is line up the tailgate with our spare tire carrier mounting location and thread in bolts for that. There's going to be 4 mounting locations for this. We want to make sure that everything lines up, not just the tailgate and the body bolts. And we can start to gradually tighten everything down at this point once we know that everything's lining up. So all of these bolts went in just fine. So these are at a good location right now. You want to make sure that the carrier or the hinges are level as well. So what I'm going to do now is tighten up the hinge bolt on the tailgate first using a T50 Torx, a 3-inch extension, and a hand ratchet just to get them tightened down by hand. Then we can go ahead and tighten them up and torque them down. Then we can move to the inside and tighten down our body hinge bolts. I'm gonna reuse the 13mm socket, the 3-inch extension, and also use my impact wrench for this to tighten these down. I would also recommend to use a little bit of blue thread locker for this, just to make sure that those bolts are not going to vibrate out. And then we can test out our tailgate, make sure that it is connected correctly, and start to piece everything back together. All right. Seems pretty level, seems like it's opening and closing okay, so now we can attach our spare tire carrier and put together our trim. So what we're going to do first is remove those 4 bolts that we originally put in to line up our hinges. I'm using a 13mm socket and a 3-inch extension again. Then what we can do is line up our carrier and reattach those 4 bolts on this side, and then we can add our spacers on this side. Now we don't want to snug these up just yet because we need a little bit of wiggle room to attach our spacers, but we can grab our factory bolts. So now we can attach our spacers. We just want to keep a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want to snug those bolts up on the other side too much. We can sneak this behind here, line it up with the back of our spare carrier, put our bolt through, and line it up with our mounting location. Same thing for the bottom. Then now we can tighten up all of our bolts with that 13mm socket. Once those are tightened up, we can move our wiring harness back through our tailgate, reattach this grommet here. Then we can open up our tailgate and reattach our trim. So what we can do first is reattach our backup camera and our third brake light harness. Pop this panel back into place, line up all of our pins. Give it a good press. Right. Then we can move to our cargo area. So what I'm gonna do is just put our stickers back on. You don't necessarily have to do this, but it just cleans up the look if you ever take this trim piece off again. It also is going to protect those hinges as well. So now that that's on, we can reinstall our subwoofer trim. I did end up disconnecting this wiring harness. It's just one plug. Plug that back into the factory location. Right, now that that's back in place, we can line this up the best that we can, making sure that that seat belt's out of the way. So you do want to make sure that the trim piece sits under this seal here. Should be able to maneuver it. So using that T25 Torx, we can reinstall that screw holding on the subwoofer trim. So now we can put on our tie downs. So 2 are going to be facing forward as far as the little clip is concerned, and then 1 is going to be facing the opposite direction. You're going to tighten that up with the T40 Torx. Pop that clip back into place. So now we can install this trim piece where our bolts would go. So all you have to do is just slide this into place and press down. And then we can take our cover and slide this back into place. This is just gonna tuck underneath and fold down just like that. Now we can close our rear glass and our tailgate and we'll be all set to go. So that's gonna wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe, and for more videos and products just like this, always keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.